The shoulder of mile marker 14. The radiator of the '69 Mustang didn't just fail. It surrendered with a dramatic, hissing cloud of white steam that obscured the jagged peaks of the Sierra Nevada. Great, fantastic, truly a masterclass in timing. "Silas!" Cora snapped, stepping out into the biting mountain air. Her heels clicked sharply against the cracked asphalt of the mountain pass. Silas Vance emerged from the driver's side, his leather jacket creaking as he shoved a hand through his dark, messy hair. He looked like a man who had stepped out of a classic noir film, all sharp jawline and brooding silence. He was her brother's best friend, the man who had spent the last decade treating Cora like a mild annoyance or a delicate porcelain doll. "It's an old car, Cora. It has temperaments?" Silas said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that always seemed to vibrate in the pit of her stomach. "It's 20 degrees, there's no cell service." "And the nearest town is 30 miles back," she countered, crossing her arms over her thin silk blouse. She was shivering, but she'll die before she admitted it to him. Silas didn't argue. He walked to the back of the car, popped the trunk, and pulled out a heavy wool blanket and a roll of industrial strength paracord he used for securing gear. He looked at the darkening sky, then at Cora, his eyes tracking the way her breath hitched in the cold. "Get in the back seat," he commanded. "I am not sitting in a dead car to freeze," she hissed. "I said get in." Silas stepped into her space, his height looming over her, cutting off the wind. He didn't touch her, but the sheer heat coming off his body was a taunt. "The sun is going down. The heat will stay in the cabin longer if we're together. Now, move." Cora glared, but the blue tint to her fingernails won the argument. She scrambled into the leather interior of the back seat. Silas followed, his large frame making the back seat and the Mustang feel like a cage. He didn't just sit next to her. He reached for the paracord. "Silas, what are you doing?" "You've been vibrating with nervous energy since we left the trailhead." Cora, tapping your foot, biting your lip. "It's distracting," he murmured, his hands moving with a terrifying, calm efficiency. He took her wrists, small and pale against his tanned, scarred hand brought them together. "You aren't serious," she breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I'm very serious. You spend your whole life trying to run away from yourself. For the next few hours, you aren't going anywhere." He looped the cord around her wrists, the texture rough and unapologetic. He didn't tie her to the car. He tied her hands to him, looping the other end around his own left wrist so they were tethered together by a scant 6 inches of cord. He pulled the wool blanket over both of them, the heavy fabric trapping their shared heat. "This is kidnapping," she whispered, though she didn't pull away. "This is physics," Silas corrected, his voice dropping into a dangerous, intimate register. "And if you're going to keep staring at my mouth like that, you might as well admit why you're really shaking." The interior of the car was a vacuum of tension. Outside, the wind howled against the glass. But inside, the only sound was the rhythmic friction of the wool blanket and the jagged pull of Cora's breath. "I hate you," she lied, the words dying as he leaned in, his nose brushing against hers. "Then why is your pulse jumping against the cord?" Silas reached out with his free hand, his fingers sliding into her hair, tilting her head back against the leather. "You've spent years pretending you're too refined for a man like me. But out here, with no one watching and the engine dead, ... you're just a woman who wants to be claimed." He didn't kiss her. He simply watched her, his thumb tracing the curve of her lower lip, pulling it down to reveal the damp heat within. The tether between their wrists jerked every time she moved, a constant physical reminder that he held the reins. "Show me," she challenged, her voice a broken thread of its former self. "Show me how unrefined you can be, Silas." Silas didn't need a second invitation. He moved over her, his weight a crushing, welcome pressure, with her hands bound to his. Every move he made forced her to follow. Her arms draped over his shoulders as he began to dismantle, her composure with the same ruthless efficiency he used on his engines. The leather groaned under them. The windows began to fog, turning the mountain pass into a blurred gray wasteland, leaving only the two of them in a world made of wool, cord, and the desperate, high-heat friction of a decade's worth of unspoken wanting. He took his time ignoring her pleas for him to hurry. He was a man who appreciated the mechanics of a slow burn. He wanted to hear every sound she'd ever hidden from him, wanted to feel the way she broke against him in the cramped, dark cabin of the car. When the stars finally came out, sharp and cold above the Sierra peaks, the Mustang was silent again. The cord was loose. The blanket was a tangled mess, and the heater was long gone, but neither of them felt the cold. At dawn, a highway patrol truck pulled up behind the Mustang. The officer tapped on the glass, squinting through the frost. Silas rolled down the window, his arm draped casually over the back of the seat, his leather jacket back on. Cora was leaning against his shoulder, her hair a disaster, her eyes bright and dangerously satisfied. "Everything okay here, folks?" the officer asked. "Just a minor breakdown," Silas said, his voice smoother than it had any right to be. He reached down, his fingers subtly brushing against the red marks on Cora's wrists that were hidden beneath the blanket. "We managed to keep each other warm?" Cora smiled at the officer, a secret, wicked thing. "The service was excellent, actually." The Grand Sierra Resort was a monolith of glass and neon against the rugged mountain backdrop. But for Cora and Silas, it was just a place with a lock on the door and a shower large enough for two. The valet had taken the keys to the resurrected Mustang, giving Silas a knowing, somewhat impressed look at the state of the back seat. Cora hadn't cared. She'd walk through the lobby with her head high, the faint, stinging friction of the paracord still humming on her wrists like a phantom limb. The moment the heavy oak door of the suite clicked shut, the civilized act vanished. Silas didn't even turn on the lights. The room was washed in the blue-gold glow of the casino lights from the strip below. He caught Cora by the waist, spinning her around and pinning her against the door. The thud of her back hitting the wood was a starting gun. "The car was a warm-up, Cora," he rasped, his hands sliding up to her neck, his thumbs tilting her chin back. "I'm not cramped by a gear shift anymore." Cora reached for his belt, her fingers frantic. "Then stop talking." "Silas, you spent 30 miles acting like a gentleman for the tow truck driver." "I'm bored of the gentleman." Silas let out a low, dark growl. He didn't go for her clothes. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a fresh length of the same midnight blue paracord. He'd bought a whole spool at the gas station. While the radiator was being patched, "Hands," he commanded. Cora didn't hesitate. She offered them up, crossing her wrists in front of her chest. This time, he didn't tether her to himself. He led her toward the massive, 4 posters or beta heavy, wrought iron frame that looked like it had been designed for exactly this kind of structural testing. He forced her onto her stomach, the plush duvet rising up to meet her. He took the cord and began to lash her wrists to the iron bars of the headboard. He didn't snap them shut. He wove the cord with the steady, practiced hand of a sailor, ensuring she was secured but safe. Her arms stretched taut above her head. "Silas," she breathed, the word a plea and a challenge. "You wanted to see what I could do without the steering wheel in the way," he murmured, stepping back to admire his handiwork. He began to shed his leather jacket, then his shirt, his silhouette a jagged, powerful shape against the window. "I'm a man of my word, Cora." He climbed onto the bed behind her, his weight a slow, deliberate pressure that made the mattress groan. He didn't touch her with his hands, not yet. He used the tip of a cold, silver ice bucket tong he'd grabbed from the sideboard, tracing the line of her spine from the nape of her neck to the small of her back. Cora shivered, the metal a shocking contrast to the heat of his body hovering just inches above her. "You're so reactive," Silas whispered, leaning down to nip at the sensitive skin of her shoulder. "Every time I touch you, you jump."
"I wonder."
"If I stop, will you beg?" "Try me," she challenged, though her voice was thick with a decade's worth of suppressed hunger. Silas obliged.
He stopped.
He sat back on his heels, watching her, his eyes dark and unreadable. He waited. 1 minute. 2. The silence in the room was a physical wait. broken only by the hum of the air conditioner and the frantic, rhythmic pull of Cora's wrists against the cord.
Silas.
Please, she finally broke, her forehead pressing into the pillow. Please, what? Cora, be specific. I'm a technician. I need instructions. Claim me, she choked out, her back arching, her body a live wire of anticipation. Make me forget my own name. Make me forget there was ever anyone else. Silas didn't wait for a second invitation. He leaned forward, his hands finally making contact, not with the gentleness of a friend, but with the raw, possessive hunger of a man who had finally stopped pretending. The night that followed was a masterclass in high-heat endurance. Silas was relentless, using the tether of the cord to keep her exactly where he wanted her, exploring every inch of her skin with a surgical, agonizing focus. He pushed her further than the back seat of the Mustang ever could have allowed, turning the high-end suite into a private theater of absolute surrender. When the sun finally began to bleed through the heavy velvet curtains, the cord was long gone, replaced by the heavy, warm weight of Silas's arm draped over her waist. Cora stirred, her skin sensitive and glowing, the marks on her wrists a beautiful, temporary souvenir of the night. She looked over at Silas, who was still asleep, his face finally relaxed, the brooding mask gone. She reached out, tracing the line of his jaw. He didn't wake, but his hand tightened reflexively around her waist, pulling her closer even in his sleep. The car was fixed, the road was open, but as Cora closed her eyes, she realized she wasn't in any hurry to leave the room.